So now when we take this idea of dialogue, then for me it took many years, but little by little I became aware that there's maybe really like these 4 levels which are very much interconnected actually. First one is, do we take time to listen to ourselves? And when I'm saying this now, I'm talking like in 1, 2, 3, 4, but all of these are of course connected. It's just like when you talk, you cannot give everything at once, so you have to split it up. Do we take the time? Again, we keep ourselves so busy that our parents told us maybe that okay, they have been dentists or whatever, just thought of a friend who is. So you also become a dentist, or you also become a lawyer, you also become this or that. And then, you start certain things, but you never took the time to maybe question, or also have the courage sometimes, to question, is that what your inner voice is telling you? Or what is your inner voice telling you? Are you just acting because of some outside circumstances? Or do you give some space at least to listen to what is going on inside? And there again, the very interesting thing is that really your inner voice is very silent. It doesn't make lots of noise. You have lots of other things that want to convince you to do things which are much more noisy. You need to do it, and maybe the more fishy something is, the bigger the noise. No, you can do it because it will bring you this and that, and actually it's a good investment, and so on and so on. We have all that. And then there will be just a little feeling there that and then the other part gets even noisy. No, but and so on and so on and so on. So, are we able to listen to this? And are we able little by little to discriminate this little noise, little voice, voice, which is inside? And for that again, if you don't calm down, if you don't quiet down, we cannot hear it. At the same time, what is very useful is when we have a dialogue with other people. Because we may not be aware of something, but others tell us, oh, Christoph, be careful, like here. So, because it's coming from outside, it's more, you can hear it better. Still, you may not want to hear it. Family, your friends, others tell you something, but you're shut off, you don't want to hear it. But if you start to listen to it, again, so we again have to have this like attitude of opening up, then it may point. See, this dialogical dialogue I was telling before, and understanding where the other person is standing. Little by little, you also understand more where you are standing. Talking with friends of mine who are, philosophers, or like musicians, or dentists, or lawyers, or shopkeepers, or you find that's not what I am. I like music also, but it's not my vocation, it's not my passion. I like to play a little, but it's not that. But then, through the eyes of the others also, it's like, oh, Christoph, you're good in that, and then so little by little you also start to understand where are you in relationship to the others. Because you don't exist like this, or alone like an atom or something like this. You're connected to everything. So I like this beautiful Indian idea, dharma. No? You have dharma, then you have your swadharma. How to find your swadharma? Not in sense of institutional varna, shrama, dharma, which is also from outside more. But like really, what is your inner voice? What is the little instrument that you are playing in this big orchestra, which plays the symphony of life? Are you a flute or a violin, or are you the drums, or what are you? Nobody tells you at the beginning. So listening to yourself and also exchanging with others who do other things, little by little you can understand better, like what your specific maybe role may be. And this, I think, it's true as much on the level of individuals, also true on the level of cultures. Certain cultures have more developed certain aspects, others other aspects. And so where do we stand and how can we enrich each other from this? But then the connectedness, like when you start to feel also this human connectedness, little by little also you start to feel much more you're connected to everything. Just think about it. For any of you, to be able to be here, in a certain way you needed a whole universe. You had to have like billions of years of like Big Bang, creation of galaxies, creation of the stars, the sun. All these things had to happen so that you can be here. It's quite amazing when you think about it. Often we take it for granted. You know, this is here, and you know, now I'm here. Okay, you don't see more than that. But at night, you look at the stars, you see all these things, and you're part of all that. And so it's important actually to also listen to these parts of ourselves, not only to save the environment, but we are part of it. We are the environment in a certain way. And in the West, especially in the academic settings, there's very much emphasis on intellect. So it's the mind. And sometimes like the body is a bit looked down, you know, if you're like the sports teacher or something like this, you know, it's like, it's not so good. You know, if you're doing philosophy, then it's the mind. That's what is important. But so that's where the problem starts with the contemplation of nature, you know, like you don't even consider your body as part of nature. And when I say body, we can even talk in the Indian concept of panchakosha, meaning like you have your physical body, but then you have energy body, you have all the different bodies. It's not only like the physical body. But all this is also part of nature. It's made of Pancha Mahabhuta, it's made of the 5 elements. So, I think for many, at least Westerners, like dialogue would probably, especially city people, already start with an openness like to dialogue with and listening to people. But then it's very important, like places like here, that the connectedness goes beyond the pure, like human connectedness, but that we are connected like in this whole big organism which is there. And when I said before, you know, that life is not a void to be filled, it's a plenitude to be discovered. Or to say like a human being is not a void to be filled. You will become a doctor and you will get married and you will have children and you will, and fill. But it's a plenitude to be discovered. I don't mean to say a plenitude in the sense I'm so full of myself. No, what is the plenitude? The plenitude is you start to look and you find you're connected to everything. Like I was saying, you really start to look as who am I? And you start to see you're a brother of the stars. You start to look at my name, Christoph. I was very curious about this name. What does it mean exactly? So I'm not going to tell you now the whole story of Christophorus. But it's a saint. In Greek, Christophorus means the one who carries Christ. So actually there's a whole story, and like in the Catholic churches you will see him. He's always carrying the Christ on his shoulder. And baby Christ, who is holding like a little globe. And so he's having this big stick, and he's carrying him across a river. Because actually that's what St. Christoph did, he was carrying people across rivers. And for a very strange reason, I found that in Eastern Europe, sometimes St. Christoph is depicted as a dog-faced saint. We don't have animal-faced saints, you know, like all our saints are human beings. So, where did that come from? You know, I was like, this is very, very, very weird. And so I made some research. And what did I find? I found that in ancient Egypt, there was a god who was called Anubis, who was a jackal head god, who was also in charge of taking the people who died across to the other world. And then, you know, the Greek and the Egyptians had lots of contacts. And the Greeks had another god which was called Hermes. And Hermes was this god, you know, like with the little wings on his shoes, and was carrying the messages of the gods. And so at some point there was a new cult which came, which was Hermanubis, where they mixed Hermes and Anubis together. And apparently when the Christian religion took over, Saint Christopher, part of his legend, actually got inspired by this Hermanubis. And that is where this Dogface comes from. So why am I telling you this story? It's just to give one kind of example of how you take Christoph, you say you cannot have a more Christian name. For some people, already Christian, they forgot that it comes from the Middle East. They think it's like a European Christian white stuff or something like this. And then you start to look into this a little more. You start to see, oh, okay, there's a Christian thing, but there's Greek things, there's Egyptian things, maybe there's even more than that. And so you start to see that just in this single word, which maybe has seemed very tiny or very like this, there's a whole plenitude of relationships which are there. There's a whole history of exchanges, of cultures, of, all this is there. And so there's so many things when you take the time, a tree, like a tree is starting to grow. How can the tree grow? Of course you need the seed, but you need the soil, you need the sun, you need the rain, you need so many things that this thing can actually, and where's the water coming from? It's not like the cloud who is waiting there to just rain from time to time. There's this whole cycle which is going on. So it's this idea that starting to be silent and having like a contemplative approach to things which we may take for granted. Contemplative is also to be able to marvel at things. Wow, see it like with the innocent eye again. You're not taking things for granted. It's like this, I've seen it before. I did my Tai Chi already 1,000 times. What's a big F? Just do it like a robot. Then nothing can happen. On the other hand, if each time you're doing something, you experience it like for the first time, you really taste it, then this whole richness is actually coming. And then little by little you also start to discover something else, which is this fourth dimension, which is, although you may discover all these links, although you may discover all these beautiful forms and whatever, it always points somehow beyond. You cannot ever completely say what you want to say. And I love this saying very much, when they say like the wise man points to the moon and the foolish man looks at the finger. Words point, at least silent words point. You try to point towards something which you cannot express. Most of us, we get caught up in the fingers. My tradition is the best tradition. My guru is the best guru. My professor in our school of philosophy is the best school. And we have to learn by heart, the thing, and so on and so on and so on. We have to repeat it, and so on. But do we get the point that these things are just ways to point towards something else? Are we able to not only look at the finger? Oh, look at what it's pointing to. When you read the book, are you able to not only read the words, but like what was the author trying to convey? What is he talking about? And so you see that there's always this mystery. There's always this open space or this thing which can never be fully expressed. When the Buddha was asked, is there a God or no God, it's one of the questions he never answered in words. But when he was asked that question, he smiled. Which is not no answer. It's a silent answer. But certain things you cannot talk about in words. And maybe at the beginning, when we have not started to listen too much, we may not even be aware that this kind of dimension is there. Because we think that everything can be, and maybe we can find this ultimate formula of life. I don't know, maybe it's more a Western thing. Has any of you come across this book, like The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy? Yeah. So it's interesting, because they find out after a long time that actually the whole planet and everything, it's a big computer built by mice, if I remember, to find out what is the meaning of life. And so the computer computes for, I don't know, 1,000,000 years, 1,000,000,000 years, or something like this, and then everybody gathers, like so that the computer will finally give its answer. And the computer answers 42. Everybody's like, what kind of answer is that? Meaning of life is 42. What does that mean? And then the computer, I don't remember exactly what he says, but then he's like, no, but you have to ask a more meaningful question, something, because otherwise I cannot come up with something else. But sometimes I have to think about this, in endeavors, like scientific endeavors. It's a little like we want to find this formula, life is equal this, and then if we find this, then we're happy, If we find some Guruji who gives us that mantra, which is basically this, then we have it, that's the thing, So what we are doing is we try to limit, again, this thing which is much, 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 much more open.